Hey, what is going on guys? My name is IndyGamerTag and I'm back for your daily Fortnite video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys Faze Sway settings. Obviously Faze Sway is typically regarded as one of the greatest Fortnite controller players literally ever. His edits, his builds, his mechanics are quite honestly incomparable to any other controller player on Fortnite. So a lot of people want to know what settings he uses, from sensitivity settings to dead zones, keybinds, and other miscellaneous settings. Obviously if we use his settings, this might give us the push that we need in order to play half as good as he does. So I'm not only going to be sharing with you guys the settings that he uses, but I'm also going to go into a brief description behind each setting, why it's important, and why this setting allows him to play the way that he's quite honestly able to play. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and talk about Faze Sway's settings. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the sensitivity settings. We're going to work our way from top to the bottom, and this is starting with the build mode sensitivity multiplier as well as edit mode sensitivity multiplier. His build mode sensitivity multiplier is a 2.4 and his edit mode multiplier is a 2.3. This obviously is a lot higher than pretty much what most people use on controller Fortnite. However, with these very fast multipliers, it kind of justifies how he's able to build and edit as fast as he does. So these are very critical for your building and editing speed. Again, 2.4 for the build mode sensitivity multiplier and a 2.3 for the edit mode sensitivity multiplier. Again, very critical if you want to build and edit as quickly as he does. Quickly going down is now the advanced look sensitivity settings. His look horizontal and look vertical speed are both matched at a 47%. So these two settings are honestly pretty average and on par with what most Fortnite players use. Certainly not too high to the point that you can't aim normally, and definitely not too low to the point that it's too slow. Like again, 47% is pretty much dead smack in the middle for what the average player uses. He also has a 0% turning horizontal and turning vertical boost. Don't worry about these, he does not use them. And of course his turning boost ramp time is all the way minimized at 0.00 seconds. Of course, he does not use boost with his sensitivity settings. Now next is his ADS look horizontal and ADS look vertical speed. He actually has both of these set to a 12%. This is a lot lower than what the average player uses. I believe the average is at like a 16 to a 20%. So 12% does seem relatively low. However, it's going to help you a lot when you're aiming. You're not going to ever kind of over aim or make it so it's too difficult to kind of keep on track with a player. 12% is pretty spot on. When players are running in front of you, you should be able to always keep the tracking perfectly on their body and hit majority of your shots. So I can definitely reason with a 12% for again both his ADS horizontal and vertical speeds. And as I mentioned, there's no turning horizontal or vertical boost, so have these both at a 0% with a 0.00 seconds turning boost ramp time. Then moving even further downwards is the advanced sensitivity settings. His look dampening time is lowered all the way to a 0.00 seconds, and his look input curve is actually set to linear. As most of us know, there's linear and exponential for the look input curve. Most players use exponential because it definitely feels a lot more comfortable and not too fast to the point that you can't control what you're doing. Linear is typically regarded as a more advanced look input curve. Linear is what a lot of the pro players use on controller, so it definitely goes without stating that linear is typically what you should try to aim towards using. However, do keep in mind and be very self-aware that the initial switch from exponential to linear typically makes it feel very unnatural at first. It's going to feel very different when you're looking around, so give yourself about a day or two to get used to it and then kind of form an opinion and judgment whether you want to stay on linear or exponential. But again, Faze Sway as well as a ton of other pro Fortnite players do use linear, and again there's a huge reason behind it. His aim assist strength is obviously set to a 100%. And then now is going to be the controller dead zones. This is pretty much going to be the last of the sensitivity settings. His move stick dead zone is set to a 5%, and his look stick dead zone is also set to a 5%. The move stick dead zone doesn't really matter all that much, but the look stick dead zone, obviously, this is going to be our right analog stick, which pretty much controls everything from building to editing to aiming. Quite honestly, everything is controlled by the look stick. So for most people, I would assume a look stick dead zone at 5% seems relatively low. Do keep in mind, however, again, he is building and editing at an astronomically fast speed, so in order to keep his builds and edit speeds up and on par with what he usually plays, you will have to lower your look stick dead zone to about a 5%. So granted, some of his sensitivity settings might seem pretty on average and on par with what most people use, the look stick dead zone kind of is the reasoning behind his quick and speedy movements. So the look stick dead zone is basically the root and core of why he's able to build and edit extremely fast, turn on players fast, and just have a very crisp and snappy movement. So that is all for the sensitivity settings. We'll now be making our way to the keybinds, which is also very important. So he does use a PlayStation 4 controller, but you can certainly use these settings on any controller like an Xbox One controller. So basically the changes he has made is that his left analog stick clicked in is binded to toggle pickaxe. His Y or triangle is binded to edit, And those are honestly the two main changes that he has made, and of course it goes without saying that he does play on a Builder Pro. Now the reason he has this wire triangle button binded to edit is because he does play on claw, so his index finger is typically resting on wire triangle, so this allows him to have quite honestly instant edits. So if you do play on claw, this is probably going to be the best keybinds you could use. It's definitely not necessary to use claw, however it is definitely made specifically for claw players opposed to someone that plays normally. And again, as I mentioned, his left analog stick is also binded to a toggle pickaxe, so whenever he goes from his pickaxe to anything in his inventory, he simply is just tapping the button that his finger is already resting on. And then lastly of his keybinds is in his edit controls, and this is that his B or circle button is binded to confirm. So whenever he goes to make an edit on a wall or whatever the case might be, he presses wire triangle to edit, right trigger to select as always, and then uses B or circle to confirm. And I personally use relatively similar keybinds. The only difference is that my edit controls are slightly different, but I can vouch for these keybinds in general and let you know that these are amazing, especially if you are a claw player. Now it's not necessary per se to play with a claw grip, however it is definitely designed for claw players, and definitely the most efficient way to use these keybinds is playing with a claw grip. So now that we've covered his sensitivity settings, dead zones, and keybinds, all that we're left with is some of the miscellaneous settings. So these will be things like auto open doors, tap to search interact, colorblind mode, motion blur, so on and so forth. So some settings that won't have too much of an impact on the game, but certainly will help you in the long run, especially if you're trying to play like him. Starting with his colorblind mode, he actually uses a Tritanope with the colorblind strength of 10. This basically just brings more vibrancy to the game. It doesn't change too much, it doesn't make a drastic difference, it just makes the game more vibrant and brighter, and the colors pop out a bit more. His motion blur is set to off, and this is more than likely just to help with the frames per second. This not only helps FPS on PC, but also is very critical and can help your FPS on console as well. He has sprint by default turned on, and I know I mentioned that some of the miscellaneous settings aren't too important, but sprint by default is critical when using these settings. Keep in mind his keybinds, there is no sprint button. Left analog stick is typically what you use to sprint, however he has it actually binded to toggle pickaxe. So sprint by default is necessary when using these settings. This way you will not just be jogging around and you'll be able to actually sprint full speed. Auto open doors is turned on. This is also a pretty important part of his settings as well, because for a player like him that is constantly editing, when you go to make a wall edit, sometimes you accidentally edit a door rather than like a 3-corner edit, and with auto open doors it allows you to simply just run right through it. It does not slow you down in any way at all, but if you were to have auto open doors turned off, then it would obviously create a huge problem. When you accidentally edit a door, you'll have to leave your edit menu, manually open the door. I mean, it definitely creates a huge issue, so auto open doors turned on is very important if you're a player that's constantly building and editing. He has auto pickup weapons turned off. I know he used to use this setting, but it's definitely for the better interest of pretty much everybody to have this setting turned off. Auto sort consumables to the right he has turned off, and this one is kind of just a subjective setting. If you're a player that constantly puts your chug splashes, med kits, bandages, shields, etc., to the very right of your inventory, then this setting should be on. Otherwise you can leave it alone and have it turned off. He has confirm edit on release turned off. I know this is a very controversial setting. Some players say to use it, it will help you in your edits. Other players say not to, and he of course has his turned off. Main reasoning behind this is because if he were to have this on, it pretty much wouldn't benefit him at all. His edits are basically as fast as you can possibly get, so confirm edit on release definitely doesn't even replicate his edits, not even like 25%, so definitely leave this setting off. He also has tap to search or interact on, and this setting doesn't like give a drastic change, but is a bit of a ease access kind of setting. So basically what tap to search or interact does is, rather than having to hold X or square for the entirety of the time when opening a chest, ammo box, supply crate, or reviving a teammate per se, basically you simply can just tap it and then you no longer have to hold it. So if you open a chest, for example, you simply tap X or square and the chest will open rather than having to hold it. So again, obviously this setting isn't a huge change, but he does have it on for a bit ease of access, and you guys should as well. And that's relatively all of these settings that he uses. Again, we went over everything from sensitivity settings to dead zones, then talked about his keybinds, and lastly discuss his miscellaneous settings that he has either turned on or off. And again, I try to give you guys a brief description behind every setting, this way you can kind of understand the concept behind these settings, and when you're using them it'll all make sense. Now again, these settings are quite unique in their own way, so if you do make the switch over to them, give yourself about a day or two to get used to them, and hopefully after replicating all of these settings that he uses, we can play to about like 25% of the level that he plays at. Now if you guys enjoyed today's video or found it helpful, a like would be beyond appreciated down below. On the contrary, if you genuinely disliked today's video, then by all means feel free to leave a dislike as well, and if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. Nonetheless, my name is IndyGamerTag, thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Adios.